The day the NBA stopped, the beginning of March 2020, the NBA moved with its usual rhythm. Few realized that on the 16th of February 2020, they were witnessing the last great heartbeat before silence. On the 11th of March 2020, in Oklahoma, a game between the Thunder and the Jazz was halted before tip-off. The news spread like wildfire. In Europe, Rudy Gobert had tested positive for COVID-19. That instant broke the course of the season. That same night, Adam Silver announced the unthinkable. The NBA was suspending its season indefinitely. For the first time, basketball went dark, not because of a strike or a conflict, but because of an invisible enemy. The decision shook everyone. Fans were left without their spectacle, arena workers without immediate jobs, and players without a clear future. Across households and entire cities, the same question echoed: what happens now? The pause turned the world's best athletes into solitary practitioners. Garages became makeshift gyms. Private courts turned into empty temples. Basketball was reduced to the echo of a ball bouncing in silence. Behind the sport, the economy trembled. Millions in losses struck television networks, sponsors, and entire cities that relied on each game. The NBA realized it was not just about basketball, but about financial survival. In closed offices, Adam Silver and his team searched for answers. Epidemiologists, doctors, executives, and players examined every scenario, canceling the season or reinventing it entirely. League figures began to speak out. Some voiced fear, others hope. The basketball community remained united in uncertainty, wondering if the game could return without endangering lives. The suspension coincided with a nation about to erupt. On the 25th of May 2020, George Floyd was killed in Minneapolis under the knee of a police officer. The cry of Black Lives Matter spread, and NBA players became the voice of a nation demanding justice. In the midst of the health and social crisis, a radical idea began to take shape: isolate the entire league in one safe location, create an impenetrable bubble. It sounded like an unreal experiment, but it would be the only way to save the season. The NBA was suspended, without direction, and in the middle of a global storm. But on the horizon, a plan began to shine: to build a closed world where basketball could survive. The future of the league depended on making the impossible real. The Disney bubble. Under the direction of Adam Silver, the NBA presented an unprecedented idea: gather 22 teams in one place, isolated from the outside world, protected by a health perimeter. There would be no travel, no fans, a bubble. The stage was Walt Disney World in Orlando, Florida, a gigantic resort with hotels, training courts, and arenas. There, basketball would build its own ecosystem, a closed universe to survive. The rules were strict: constant COVID-19 tests, mandatory quarantines upon arrival, electronic wristbands to control movements, and absolute prohibition of outside contact. Inside the bubble, everything had to remain under control. In July 2020, the teams began to arrive on private flights. Players with masks, luggage in hand, entered a closed world. For many, it was a brutal contrast. From packed arenas to hotels guarded like fortresses. Each player had to spend days in their room without contact with anyone. In mandatory quarantine, they ate meals left at the door, trained in solitude, waited for medical results. Basketball, for the first time, began in confinement. Once quarantine was over, the bubble became a city. Restaurants, barbershops, fishing areas, and bike rides. The NBA wanted its stars to survive, not only physically but mentally, in a controlled environment. The first days were not easy. Some players shared photos of simple meal trays and rooms that seemed modest compared to the usual luxury of the NBA. For many, the bubble was a forced camp. The bubble imposed strict discipline. A single step outside the perimeter without authorization meant mandatory quarantine. The league could not risk contagion. In this experiment, a single infraction could ruin everything. Behind the spectacle were invisible sacrifices. Players far from their families, isolated for months, without the warmth of the fans or the freedom of normal life. The bubble was both a refuge and a golden prison. The experiment worked. Week after week, reports confirmed 0 infections inside the bubble. What seemed impossible became a global example. Basketball had created a safe space in the midst of chaos. The world of sports watched with attention. If the NBA managed to complete the season in the bubble, it would be a model to follow. But the real test had not yet begun. The game's basketball returns. On the 30th of July 2020, after more than 4 months of pause, basketball bounced again. The NBA lit up Orlando, but there were no fans, no noise, no life in the stands. Only digital echoes and the promise of a different show. The return was about to begin, but no one knew if the magic of the bubble would be enough to give the game back its soul. The first impact was the sound. There were no chants, no roars. One could hear the squeak of sneakers on the court, the echo of tactical orders, the ball hitting the backboard. It was naked basketball. The bubble was a new stage, but the heroes were the same. Damian Lillard became an unstoppable force with more than 50 points on several nights. Luka Doncic dazzled with his precocious talent, and Devin Booker kept Phoenix alive with an impeccable streak. But the bubble was not only basketball. On the courts, painted in large letters, it read "Black Lives Matter." On the jerseys, players carried messages of justice, equality, and change. Sport became a global loudspeaker, uniting the passion of the game with the urgency of a cause. Outside Disney, the protests continued. Inside, the players followed the news from their rooms. Each match, each image of police violence, fed the feeling that basketball was being played under a shadow too big to ignore. On the 26th of August, after the police shooting of Jacob Blake in Wisconsin, the Milwaukee Bucks made a decision that shook the world. They did not come out to play their playoff game. The silence of their locker room became a cry that paralyzed the entire league. The boycott spread like fire. In a matter of hours, other teams announced that they too would not play. For the second time that year, the NBA was suspended. This time not because of a virus, but because of the fight against racial injustice. Inside Disney, the conversations were intense. Some players wanted to leave the bubble. Others argued that staying was the best way to keep their voices loud. The tension was maximum. Continue or end the season. After hours of discussions, the league and the players reached an agreement. The season would continue, but with stronger social commitments. Basketball would go on, and with it, the voice of millions. The most singular championship. After the boycott, the playoffs resumed. But the bubble had already changed forever. It was not just a health experiment, but a chapter in the social history of sport. The bubble had survived the pandemic and a historic rebellion. Now came the final test, the definitive playoffs, where an unforgettable championship would be written. In the West, surprises marked the path. The Denver Nuggets of Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic came back from impossible series, becoming the sensation of the bubble. Each victory seemed to defy logic, each Murray three-pointer a symbol of resistance. In the East, the solidity of the Miami Heat surprised the world. Jimmy Butler led with burning intensity, dragging a team that, from the shadows, became an unexpected protagonist. Milwaukee, the favorite of the regular season, fell short. Many expected an all-Los Angeles conference final between Lakers and Clippers, but in the bubble, the script changed. The Clippers fell to Denver, leaving LeBron James and Anthony Davis as the only kings of Los Angeles. On the 6th of October 2020, the finals matched the Lakers against the Heat. Two teams at opposite poles, one with the pressure of honoring Kobe Bryant's legacy, the other with the hope of a miracle from the bubble. In those finals, Jimmy Butler played games for eternity. You could tell by the looks on their faces. In the fifth game, exhausted and with barely any strength left, he carried Miami on his shoulders with a legendary performance. His image leaning against the barrier, gasping, is one of the most iconic of the bubble. But the Lakers were too much. Anthony Davis became a wall on defense and a hammer on offense. LeBron James, in his 17th season, once again showed why his name belongs to the legends. The purple and gold advanced with the force of destiny. Each Lakers victory was tinted with memory. That year, the world had mourned the death of Kobe Bryant in a helicopter accident. In the bubble, the team felt they were playing not only for a championship, but for an immortal legacy. On the 11th of October, the Lakers closed the series in the sixth game. The final score was overwhelming, but the meaning went much deeper. In the midst of a pandemic, in a broken world, the NBA had managed to complete its most difficult season. LeBron James was chosen Finals MVP with his fourth title. He proved he was still the king in a league of new generations. His speech spoke not only of basketball, but of resilience, unity, and social responsibility. After more than 3 months locked away, the players left Disney. The bubble, with all its limitations, had worked. Not a single positive case, a historic championship, and a league that had managed to reinvent itself in the face of the abyss. The bubble was left behind, but its memory persists. It was the year basketball conquered silence, when the fight for justice mixed with sport, and when a trophy shone in the darkness. A season never to be forgotten, because it was not just NBA history, it was human history.